So when George asked me to share with you guys, I asked if you guys had a theme or anything in a direction to go, and basically he said, share whatever's on your heart and what God's doing right now with you. And I was like, that's a heavy journey. It's been probably, it kind of started about 8 months ago, and in this 8 months time frame, I was actually here in between that. And I talked about the vine, the branches, the fruit, and as I was preparing for this message, I asked God, I wasn't able to really prepare at home because we live in a basement suite with 2.5 bedrooms and 3 really small children. So the noise level, is always here. Even if all the doors are closed, the noise level is still, you cannot, I told Olivia, I want to buy these Mickey Mouse, construction head things just to, put them over my ears sometimes to, try to hear God's voice. No, and so she was like, why don't you just go somewhere? And I said, okay. So I got in the van, I drove away, and I was like, Lord, where do you want me to go? And on the way out to Lumby, just in Coldstream, I don't know if you know Vernon or not, but on the highway out to Lumby, just at the beginning, at the end of Vernon, there's this beautiful Catholic church on a hill. And I felt like I should go there. So I go and pull in this parking lot. One gate's open, one is closed. It kind of felt like an intruder. But it's God's planet, right? Anyways, so I park in this parking lot. I turn the car off and I look out. And right in front of me is a vineyard with vines and branches and literally what he's been talking to me about. And it was just such a reminder that it's him. And as I'm sitting here listening to the worship and being in God's presence, and I look around, and when you guys look around what you actually post here, my sermon is on your wall. My message is on your wall. My message is going to be about the Lord being, your God is with you. That he knows your plans, that he has plans to prosper you and not to harm you. Plans to give you hope and a future.
That's right.
And then I read the thing that you guys have on the wall, which is the Spirit of the Lord is on me because he has anointed me to preach the good news to the poor. He has sent me to proclaim freedom for the prisoners and recovery of sight for the blind, to release the oppressed and to proclaim the year of the Lord's favor.
Hallelujah.
Right? You have it on your walls. The essence of what it means to be a follower of Jesus is written on your walls. So that is awesome. That is incredible. And that is kind of where my journey started. 8 months ago, I really wanted to grow more in hearing God's voice and the prophetic and that interaction with God. And honestly, I didn't have much to gauge by. And I used to always think of prophetic as these insane encounters with the Lord that are a heavenly one moment, a point in time where it's all heaven opens and it's this moment and you hear that voice and then you pass that along. And I was I want to be in that place, Lord. I want to be in a place where heaven opens. Well, heaven is open. It's never closed. It's actually always here. But in this journey of thinking I'm pursuing something that is an object, because the prophetic to me always seemed like an object, it's actually relationship.
Right on.
It's nothing but relationship. It's relationship to God. Getting to know him one-on-one, getting to know his voice, and then being able to speak that out.
Right on.
That's the prophetic. It's so simple.
That's right.
It is so not meant to be complicated. And as I'm pursuing God, and God's just wonderful. He just has alternative motives all the time. In a good way. So he's I'll give him an inch and he'll just take that inch and he'll open that up to a mile, and I've been talking to God about compassion. I told you guys I'm from Germany, and some of you might remember this, I'm not, but I'm not the most compassionate person in my upbringing and my personality, but that's why I was God, I want compassion. I want compassion for the people around me. I want to see them through your lens, and because you can't really speak into people's lives if you don't care about them.
Right on.
What is that sounds really harsh, actually, but it's true. A lot of times we think of it more as God and I'm going to give you something, and I don't really care where you're at and who you are, but it's supposed to be the opposite. We're supposed to be in relationship as well as me with him.
That's right.
And then once I'm able to have both ways, there's this, we did this parenting course, and it talked about how sometimes with our children, we'll take all our wisdom like pearls and throw them to the pigs. Because we don't wait for their heart to be open for when we give the wisdom, we just slam it at them because they should know this, right? And sometimes we do that with each other. I'd be like, I got a word for you, and you try to follow this. I don't know your name, but I'm just going to point at you. You speak a lot usually on these Zoom calls, so I think you can handle it. In love.
I accept that.
Thank you. But we give these pearls away, but because there's not that opening in a relationship in that moment, we sometimes waste what we're saying because it's actually not landing on any fruitful soil. So the Lord's been basically stirring my heart, and I'm asking for compassion. He didn't just start with compassion, he gave me compassion not just for you and I, but actually started to give me compassion for the people that don't know him. And he gave me this picture, and I felt like I was in an art gallery with God, and I've never experienced this before. And there was a picture of a fortress and a wasteland. And so the fortress was this shiny, beautiful white gold castle. You couldn't miss it. And then there was just wasteland, like dead trees, really dark and gloomy. And I stood there, looked at this picture, and it felt like God wanted to tell me something with that. And I was like, Lord, what are you trying to show me? And he's like, well, look at the fortress. So I looked at the fortress, and I see all these people building the walls higher and higher, wider and wider, golder and golder. And I was like, okay, what do you, like, obviously you want me to see that they're building. What are they building? And he's like, they're building the church. This is my church. This is my body. And I was like, okay, so obviously you have more. Why is there a wasteland? What is the wasteland? And then he's like, well, why don't you look at it? And as I started to look into the wasteland, I started seeing silhouettes of people, just the outline of people. And he's like, these are the people I died for. These are the people that need freedom. I have a victory plan for every person you see there. Don't get stuck behind that wall.
Yeah.
And my heart just started to, like, first of all, I was like, okay, I haven't really experienced this. Literally the next day, I read a book that Charlie from VCF, he gave me, and in that book, this guy shared, this is 1970s, this guy shared a vision that is exactly the same as what I just got from the Lord. Like the message in that picture that he gave, it's a little bit of a different, like he described the fortress as a ball and like the God's stream, and us building walls to retain God's stream. And the message was exactly the same way, because Jesus stood on the bottom of those walls and said, why have you forsaken my people? And then you read your scripture on the wall, and it's so in alignment with what is on your wall right here. He has sent me to proclaim freedom for the prisoners and recovery of sight for the blind, to release the oppressed. You know, that's what we're called to. We're not called to little things. We're called to big things. We're called to things that are going to transform things. But his plans are to prosper us and not to harm us.
That's right.
But in all of this, you look at your next verse, God is with you. The Lord your God is with you. He wants to, and the simplicity of Christ, the simplicity of God and the relationship is what can be annoying. Because sometimes that sounded bad. Sometimes we want it to be a certain, like, sometimes it's harder. We make it harder because then we feel okay not achieving it. But Christ is different. When he came into our world, he was so simplistic. He just had fellowship. Yeah. He didn't care where he had fellowship. He just had fellowship. Didn't matter who it was. Didn't matter if it was a person running to touch his garment. He chose to turn around. The power already went out of it. The healing was done. The lady just touched his robe. The healing was done. He could have kept walking. He turned around and acknowledged her and told her that because of her faith, she is healed. He didn't have to do that. He chooses relationship everywhere he goes. Even the Pharisees, he had relationship with them. He was honest with them. He was straight with them. It didn't always sound kind, but he didn't ignore them either. If they heard his words, they had an opportunity. he did still provide an opportunity for them.
That's right.
So as I'm going into this place of actually wanting to learn about the prophetic, realizing more about the compassion that God has for the victory he has already prepared for every single one. He prepared a victory plan for me. And because it's been walked out by believers, I am standing here today. And that's probably truth for all of you. There was a plan, a victory plan for you to come into relationship with Christ. And because there were believers in your life, because you don't get born and you know about Christ. That just simply doesn't happen. Somebody in your life was Jesus' hands and feet.
That's right.
And was able to tell you how wonderful he is.
Yeah.
And without that person, you wouldn't be sitting here today. And it could be multiple. It could be a church. It could be a community. So I was laying outside under a tree and I was reading my Bible and God was like, there's really two things. Relationship is number one. Nothing beats relationship. Relationship to me, but relationship to people. And two, just be my hands and feet. So it's not my plans and my goals and what I want to do. It's being hands and feet for his work.
Right on.
So you don't actually have to take on the pressure of what that work is, because it's not you who has to accomplish it. The plans that he has, it's not for you to accomplish it. It's his plan.
Right on.
So he wants to accomplish it. There's no way he's going to make a plan and not want to do it. So we need to have that faith and trust in him to say, like, okay, you got a plan. I need to be in alignment with that plan. I need to actually give you the room to let that plan happen in my life.
Right.
But you cannot do that without that relationship. And it's scary how simple it is, isn't it? Because you can't hide from it. You can't say, oh, that doesn't work for me. None of you can tell me today that you cannot have a relationship with God and that it's too hard to do his plan, because he's going to do the plan in you. Right. It's his plan, his work. You're just hands and feet. Yeah. It's not like the tool can say it's too hard. You know, it's too hard to turn a nut with a wrench. I'm super not into tools, so I might butcher this one hard. You know, it's not like there's one purpose, you know, for that tool, and it will accomplish it if it's in the right hands. So whose hands are we giving ourselves into?
Right on.
Right?
Yeah.
So the Lord pointed me to probably the most well-known Bible verse, and it's the Great Commission. It's in Matthew 28:16. Then the 11 disciples went to Galilee, to the mountains where Jesus had told them to go. When they saw him, they worshipped him, but some doubted. Out of those 11 disciples, some had doubt. It's okay to doubt. It is okay to sometimes not be 100% sure, because that's where faith comes in. Then Jesus came to them and said, all authority in heaven and on earth has been given to me. Not me, but to Jesus. All authority was given to Jesus. Therefore, go and make disciples of all nations. Baptize them in the name of the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit, and teaching them to obey everything I've commanded you. And surely I am with you always, to the very end of the age. So basically, Jesus is not saying, I gave you all the authority and that's why you can do it.
That's right.
All authority was given to him.
Yeah.
Therefore, how does that make sense? Because he has the authority, therefore I got to do it? Like, that's not, I work in business and I work in management, that's not how it works. It's not like I'm going to go to my employee and say, because I have this authority, you now go do my work and you can do it. It's not how it works. My employer would probably look at me and be like, well, I want your paycheck then, you know? But we do get Jesus' paycheck. We do get that relationship to God. We do get eternity. So, different view on disciple and being a disciple of God. And when we then look at, like, what does it actually mean to be a disciple? I want you to take a moment just to think about, what does it mean to you to be a disciple of Christ? And if you have something to write something down, Linda, then please do it. If you have a phone, do it. I don't want this to be an empty thing. I want you to actually think about what does it mean for you today to be a disciple. Are you a disciple? And what does disciple mean to you? It's going to be awkward silence for a minute or two. I want to read you Matthew 16:24 and to 27. Then Jesus said to his disciples, "Whoever wants to be my disciple must deny themselves and take up their cross and follow me. For whoever wants to save their life will lose it, but whoever loses their life for me will find it. What good will it be for someone to gain the whole world yet forfeit their soul? Or what can anyone give in exchange for their soul? For the Son of Man is going to come in his Father's glory with his angels, and then he will reward each person according to what they have done." It sucks when you read the Bible and you hear that you have to deny yourself. Like, it's one of those things that usually doesn't go over well in like when you talk to friends or family, or even just when you're honest with yourself. Like, sometimes you don't really want to deny yourself. I'm one of those people, I can be a dog in a bone kind of person. I don't know if you've ever heard this analogy, but when I want something, it's like that iceberg on the Titanic. It is so hard to get me off course, even though I'm going to hit that stupid iceberg, you know? And I have to really challenge myself in that. It is sometimes we think we know best. And there you go. If you're going to tell me we don't know nothing, and you have lived a longer part of your life already, and at that point you still don't know nothing, that is probably the good place to start with God. Because a lot of times when we feel like God is calling us to do something, we feel like we need to be qualified. We need, like Moses, I can't speak.
That's right.
By the way, Moses was like 80. King Josiah was 8. So there's something for you in every age span, just saying. But Moses instantly doubted that he was good enough. And you know what? Probably he wasn't. Am I good enough to stand here and speak? If you know my life, if you know where I came from, probably not. You'd probably say, how do I say this? I'm not perfect at what I do in life. I will still make mistakes. You should probably not listen to me. But you should definitely test what I say.
Right on.
And you should definitely be in relationship with God. And you should definitely pull out the gold and reject what is not yours to take. I'm not going to be offended by that, because I'm not here to do my work. I'm not here to proclaim Robin. I'm here to proclaim Jesus.
Amen.
So as you go through this feeling of, am I a disciple of God, and am I actually in this relationship that I'm ready to deny myself for him? And it doesn't mean you can't enjoy your life, because the cool thing about God is he has plans to prosper and not to harm you. He has awesome plans for you. You just got to have that faith that it's going to be better than what you can come up with. And that takes a leap of faith.
That's right.
So this is kind of, I'm trying to manage my time. This is the kind of the first part of what I wanted to talk about is our relationship to God. The second part that God has been challenging me really intently in is, why am I here today? Why am I in church? Why does church matter? I got this picture, and I'm going to share this, and it's going to maybe explain a little bit about why I'm talking about church today. Imagine yourself, you've probably all been there. You go to a restaurant. When we go to a restaurant, we have a certain expectation that we come there with what food you're going to be served, the quality of food, the quality of service. We order, we eat, we drink. When we're done, we wait for them to clean up our mess. We get the bill. And then we're going to decide if we're going to tip them or not and how much. Well, you guys are incredibly generous here in Canada. You always tip anyways, even if you felt like it wasn't good enough. Germans don't tip when they don't like what's happening. And a good tip is 10%. Olivia's looked at me when I was about to hit 10% tip and was like, that's not good. That's way too low. That's going to make them feel like they sucked. I was like, that's a good tip, you know? That's a holy number, 10%. No, I'm just kidding. But, and then we leave the restaurant, and then potentially we'll give it a review, or we'll talk to our friends and was like, well, the appetizer was a little, like it was missing a little flavor. My noodles were overcooked. The waitress was nice. You know, you talk about these things and you give it kind of like a stamp of approval or not. Maybe I'll come here again and maybe not. And when I got that picture, I was like, okay, what are you trying to tell me with that? And he's like, your attitude can be like that towards church. Where we come into church like it's a restaurant, where somebody needs to prepare something for us, somebody needs to feed us. Then we're going to go out and be like, man, that Robin guy, I don't know who he thinks he is, but what he said, it was outrageous. Like, did you hear that? He used the wrong word. Did you hear that? Did you see the shoes he wears, the pants he wears? He looks like a hippie. No, I'm just kidding. I do not look like, I'm just through something. But you know what I mean? We have this opportunity to be like, almost giving it a stamp of approval or not. Almost treat the church like a restaurant. You know, where we come, we eat, we leave. And then I was like, okay, look, give me a different picture. What is it supposed to look like? And like, I don't know if you've ever seen a picture of it, but imagine a big family dinner. Outside, big table, lots of things going on, children running around, everybody preparing food, everybody brings something, nothing lines up. It's all chaos, it's all messy, but it's family. Yeah. It's relationship. And you kind of get the drift of what I'm trying to say within that. When everybody brings something to a family dinner, most of the time you don't just attend. You bring maybe a salad, you bring a dessert, you bring an appetizer, you bring an entree, whatever it is. But you're invested, you're part of it. You wouldn't dare to sit down and let one person do the cleanup for the entire family.
Very good.
Right? And I'm going to protect the two of you in what I'm about to say, because there are a lot of times the leaders of a church are the ones that are the waitresses, that are the waiters, that are the cooks in the kitchen, that have to prepare everything to our likeness, and then we sit here and tend to judge what has happened. We have an opportunity for that. But that's not the design of church.
Right on.
Our design is family. Our design is relationship. With everything God is trying to show us and around us, and how you're born into a family, He even gives us the blueprint as of birth. You're part of something.
Yes.
And within a church, we're part of a family. When we come here to be, and this was the hard thing for me to, this is my nervous part. When I ask God why, it's comfort. We have a culture of comfort where we don't want to sacrifice, where we don't want to deny ourselves, where we don't want to be obedient to God's word more than to ourselves.
Amen.
Well, we start to look for entertainment
Right on.
versus relationship.
Yeah.
And that's hard. That was so challenging for me. And I was like, I kind of talked to you about, like, I'm worried about this part because this is my journey right now. What does church look like? And I know you guys are pretty active in what you do, and I think that is amazing. I heard about the boxes that you give out to people in the community. You pray about where to go to with that. I love that. I love the testimonies that I heard about Helping Hands. I haven't dug into it very much, but there's things going on in your community that is outstanding. Because I heard this one sentence that stuck with me. Is Enderby your problem? Is Ashton Creek your problem? Or is that it's not your problem? And it was talking about, are we part of what is going on around us? Are we his hands and feet? Because when you read that beautiful Luke 4:18, he has sent me to proclaim freedom for the prisoners. None of you probably are prisoners in this room. But there are some people that are still in prison that do not know what is going on. So I'm kind of going to, if you look at part 1 and part 2, it's about all culture of Christianity. Church needs to be a family where you bring somebody into, and you're going to be part of a family, not part of a restaurant visit.
Right on. Very good.
And honestly, we're called to be Jesus' disciples. We're called to be in relationship with him. We're called to be about him, not about us. It's challenging. Like, I kid you not. And I think that's why we need church. Because I cannot do this without other believers. I'm going to falter. I'm going to doubt. I'm going to struggle. I'm going to be messy. I'm going to make it look nasty. But when the love, and not judgment, but love, is overweighing what we think of others, that's when healing happens.
Yeah.
I believe that church is a place of transformation, of redemption. And you need to come into that culture with that kind of heart. Whatever you take out of today, I want to challenge you not to just let it go to waste. Whatever you heard and you're like, I believe that, I think that's true, I think that's the Lord speaking, write it down somewhere. Pray into it. You don't have to take it and instantly do something with it, but just bring it into your relationship with God. What does it mean for me to be your disciple, Jesus? What do you need from me right now? How can I deny myself for you? Where have I not denied myself for you? So when God told me about comfort, that we have a mentality of comfort, the counter thing of comfort is obedience and sacrifice, right? Because it's not easy. But it's our journey, right? God does call us to it. So I'm going to leave it at that for today. That's kind of been my journey. And the good thing in all of this, doesn't matter how heavy it feels, doesn't matter how hard it can be, that Bible verse is right on your wall.
Very good.
The Lord is with you. He wants to do this work. So if you are going into performance mindset right now, how you haven't been good enough, if that occurs, just say no to that. Because that's not for you to hear. God doesn't speak like that. Right?
Yeah.
There's no shame. There's no condemnation. There's no you're not good enough. There's humility, where I can say I'm not good enough. I'm not going to let the devil tell me that I'm not good enough. I'm going to say I'm not good enough, and that's why I want you. I'm not good enough to do your work, Jesus, but I trust that you are. So let's pray together.